Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, the cross stitching runner, and welcome to my channel. I want to say a big hello and welcome to all new and returning viewers. And if by chance you've stumbled across this channel is all about cross stitch with a bit of life stuff thrown in. And this is a special WIPs and Finishes Parade because it's been a while since I've done anything like it. And I guess we're getting into that sort of season where we're all starting to wrap things up. We're getting into Christmas stitching. We're thinking about plans for our stitching for next year. And I figure, hey, why not? Let's get into it. And this particular episode is also going to contain a couple of UFOs in a sense that they are two projects that I've found as part of me rummaging through my stash to collate all of the projects that I have been working on for this year. And there's a pretty good chance that these projects will never get finished. They'll most likely end up being abandoned for different reasons. So let's get into it. The first UFO piece that I have to share with you is one that I've dubbed Chinese Dragon, and I am about 90% of the way finished. I do remember working on this many moons ago. This would have been well over 13 years ago because it was well before Michael and I became a couple. And I remember this one had become initially abandoned because I was struggling to finish it because the parts that you see unfinished, especially for the dragon's body, I was working off a color chart, and in my early days of stitching and thinking that I could be okay without making a working copy, I started to get a bit lost with where I was up to because some of the greens were quite similar. And what also didn't help was that over on the side here, where you see my finger moving a bit, I had miscounted and the border is fine. I somehow, I think, miscounted with the inner part of the body where we see a part of the red, and I am over by one stitch. And I then got to the stage where I was either going to have to do a lot of frogging and then fixing up where I went wrong, and it was just getting too overwhelming. And I pulled this particular piece out again and very briefly started working on it again, where we can see some of the lighter greens very much showing up. And I had this wonderful, fantastical idea that I would be able to finish this piece off in preparation for submitting it to the Canberra Royal Show for potential entry judging and all the jazz, because for the 2025 Canberra Royal Show, the theme, if you choose to take it on, the theme is, what is it? It's myths and legends. And in my headspace, the Chinese dragon fits within the myths and legends component. And it was something where I thought, yes, that could work. Also, the stipulation for entering anything into the Canberra Royal Show, as far as needlework is concerned, is that all of the pieces need to be completed uh, after the 31st of January 2024. So, this is where it could have fitted well within all of that. And part of the other reason why I've abandoned this piece is I gave away the book that this chart was in. It is a Myths and Legends cross stitch book, and I have seen some people showing that they've purchased it from like a secondhand bookstore, or they've purchased it online, or they've had it in their stash for a while, whatever the other reasonings it is. So I know I can definitely picture the book that it's in, and all the power to you. It's just a UFO. I don't even actually, I'll rephrase. When I had started very briefly picking up working on this again, there are very similar charts to this on the internet, where I know that this particular piece has also featured in a Just Cross Stitching magazine, or a very similar titled magazine, perhaps from the year 2009. Again, it could be the case. The next piece that I have to share with you that is a UFO is an anchor chart kit. It's an anchor kit, rather, that I think is called Duckling Parade. I initially fell in love with this piece because of just how cute this is. There are many other ducklings. I think there's meant to be maybe one or two other kittens. I think there's meant to be about four ducklings as well. And I abandoned this because there is a lot of backstitch in this, or a portion of, yeah, backstitch. That's the best way I can put it, backstitch, because it is giving the texture to the kittens and the texture to the ducklings and as well, to give them that fluffiness where you want to go and pick up the ducklings and the kittens and give them cuddles and love and all the cuteness that is connected to them. Also, with this piece, it's not full cross stitch, in the sense that the kittens especially are 10 stitch with a lot of the back stitch. The main bits of cross stitch that I'm aware of would be some parts of the ducklings and maybe some parts of the kittens with regards to their nose and eyes, and maybe some elements of their ears. So I also found it quite difficult at the time to follow the chart, and the good thing is that it's a physical chart, so I was able to try and color code some of the backstitch, because the backstitching was again associated with different colors. So in theory, if I could associate or allocate certain pencil colors to the backstitch, again, it in my headspace it got too hard, so I have just well and truly abandoned it. I'm sure I have other UFOs floating around, especially when I was rummaging through a tub that I have with a lot of other stash. That may be a separate video, but they were just two of the projects that I came across that I wanted to share with you. Now let's get into the finishes. The first full finish I have is one that I am most proud of. It is one of my own designs called Dewdrop Daisy, and this is the finish. I don't remember the exact date that I had finished it. I know it was in the second half of this year, and it was stitched on 28 count linen, 2/2, using DMC threads, and I am super chuffed with this, to the point where my plan is to enter this into the 2025 Canberra Time, not Canberra Times, the 2025 Canberra Royal Show, as a way of just putting myself out there just a little bit more and just giving it a go. What I do need to figure out, by sending the organisers an email, is to find out if they need these sorts of pieces to be fully framed, or if they accept it as is, or whichever method they want. I have looked at the finer details of, I've tried to read through the finer details of what categories this would fit in, whether I'm considered to be beginner, intermediate, or expert, and all that kind of jazz. And where I'm feeling unsure of whether I'm allowed to submit this as framed or unframed is based on what I've heard through the grapevine from other Australian stitchers who have entered their pieces into other major shows where some pieces or some shows do require people to submit their pieces unframed so people, or the judges rather, can have a look at the back of the piece as well as the front and judge both sides. And that's where, yeah, I guess I'm just a little uncertain as to what their preferences are, at least for the Canberra Royal show. And hey, it'll be interesting. Like, if they do actually prefer to have a piece submitted as is, I am actually curious from their perspective whether this would be considered too messy or not. Because with the stitching retreat that I went to at the Central Coast for JK's stitching retreat, one of the attendees had put on the show and tell, or the brag table, or the unofficial brag table, was a long dog sampler piece that she had entered into one of the royal shows. It might have been the Sydney one, or it might have been the Brisbane one, which is known as the Eka. I just remember that seeing that particular long dog piece at the front, looking at it, was just wow, mind blowing. It was amazing stitching that this lady had done. And then to also look at the back of it was almost like a mirror image of the front. And the neatness and precision and beautiful work that this lady had done is, to me, just absolutely amazing. And I have these vague memories of overhearing a conversation that she was part of, to say that that particular piece may have been highly commended, or something to that effect. I don't know if she fully took out the grand prize or the first place ribbon or whatever that type of ribbon is. And I remember her saying that, or I think I remember hearing that the judges may be quite strict, at least for that particular show, and perhaps the category she entered in terms of maybe expert or intermediate. And that's where, yeah, I just want that clarification for the Canberra Royal show as a curiosity. And when I was talking about all of this with one of my mates who does cross stitching as well, she was, in a kind way, and I see her point as well, had suggested that I also consider entering my pieces into, say, the local shows, and as a way of sort of getting my name out there and perhaps getting my brand out there a little bit as well. And perhaps there being more exposure in that sense, in terms of there being a higher chance of people walking through the craft section of a regional or local show in comparison with a major royal show in each of the states of Australia. And I totally see her point in that, in terms of, if my headspace is all about getting the exposure and the foot traffic past any of the pieces that I enter into shows in the future, that in the regional shows that there could be that higher percentage, totally acknowledging that, yeah, each show is different in terms of how the attendance works. Because with the Canberra Royal Show, for example, it is a busy place. It is huge. It is overwhelming at times as well, because you have a lot of people going there to go on the ride, see the animals, and enjoy the foods and games and everything else that the show has to offer. And that whilst there will still be foot traffic going through some of the pavilions where we have the arts, crafts, the baking and food stalls and everything in between, that the foot traffic for those types of stalls and such and displays may not be as high in comparison. That I have never looked into the stats to really know. If at any point you do know and you are able to let me know in the comments, that would be absolutely awesome because I've got no idea. I just figure that in my head, the Royal Show, whether it be the Canberra Royal Show, Sydney Easter Show, the Ekka, whatever it is in South Australia, and I'm probably not going to aim for Western Australia or Northern Territory or Tassie because I guess even South Australia is a long way away as far as distance is concerned, and even Melbourne is sort of pushing the limits a bit because we're talking about postage of things and return of postage, and the domestic postage in Australia at least is expensive because we're not posting things as much anymore. Anyway, I'm getting distracted because we're here for the cross stitch. We're here for the other finishes and such that I've been working on. So thank you for bearing with me if you've stuck with that particular monologue. The next series of finishes I have are all Christmas themed and ones that I need to fully finish in December, if not start doing it now. The first one is called I Slay. This is a piece that, or the chart I had purchased off Etsy, I believe. I no longer remember details and such of who the designer is or which Etsy store I got it from. I can tell you that this was stitched on 14 count printed Aida, printed in the sense that you may see that there's some marbling of green on the front, but on the back it's just like a plain pale green colour. With a lot of the threads that I chose to use on this piece, it was variegated red in a particular stitching retreat box that I had received, and the beard was definitely just B5200, and the this here should have been white as well, but I chose to choose a different color. I don't even remember the exact color it was. It might have been gentle arc, gentle gast, as in gentle arcs sample threads, or it could have been color and cotton, something to that effect. I just wanted something to be a little bit different here. So the face and I think a little bit of the sunglasses were mostly called for. Otherwise, I went rogue. The next piece is I what is it? I'm in my Santa era, and again, this was a chart that I'd purchased off Etsy, I think it was. Again, I don't remember the exact details of who designed it, who the Etsy store owner is, or anything to that effect. And I again used the similar for the red. I used the same variegated red that I used in the Islay piece, and I'm thinking that with this one, I'll most likely do a hoop finish, just because it's that really cute small that I think will just go really well in a hoop. The next piece is a Shannon Christine Designs one, and I did do a little bit of personalizing with this as well. Personalizing in the sense of some of the colors I chose were just a little bit different to what was charted, and what's meant to be in the middle here, macaroons or macarons, they weren't charted. I put them in there partly because I mucked up a little bit. I misread the chart and put too much of a gap between the word baking and the word spirits. Otherwise, I think this has turned out beautifully. I'm happy with how this is. I stitched this 2 over 2 on what appears to be 25 count linen. We'll go with linen. The next piece is one called Jingle All the Way, and in a few minutes' time, we'll see which book it actually came out of. This was in a variegated thread that I've had in my stash for a long time. By memory, it's a Dinky Dyes variegated thread, and I had a lot of fun with this, mostly because of the colours. I loved doing this because of the colours. I stitched this on 14 count baby blue Ada, the fabric I had in my stash for ages, and this could be done as a card. I need to practice a lot. We'll see how things go. Let's stick with the Christmas theme just for a little bit longer. Okay, so the next piece is another Shannon Christine Designs. I stitched this on 14 count black Ada, and this is a mixture of called for threads and a little bit of doing my own thing. I am happy with how this has turned out though. Again, I could do this as a card, might do it as something else. Now with this one, probably wasn't a full finish or finish this year. It might have been last year. I can't remember. I know that it had started off as a start a couple of years ago with the words "Let It Snow," and I remember complaining about the stitching of 3 strands of the B52 on 18 count navy blue Ada, partly because it was just cumbersome. It was a pain, but not as painful as the metallic threads that give it the shading. Well worth it though. The The beading was fun. The beading worked out well. The snowflakes that we see is from, I think, potentially a similar chart for the Let It Snow. I think the Let It Snow is meant to be a bigger piece, but this has worked out really well. This won't be finished as a card. It will most likely be a hanging or something that people can hang off, like a doorknob or wherever they want it to be. This one is, I want to say, a Shannon Christine Designs piece, but I'm not 100% certain. This one is stitched on 14 count black Ada, and it has some personalizations in it in terms of the chosen beads for this piece. There's a few other personalizations I imagine I have talked about when I first finished this. It won't be finished as a card because I think it's a bit too big to be as a card. So this might be framed, or I'll have to do some internet searching to get some inspiration. Unless if anyone has some ideas on how I could finish many of these pieces, I would love to hear about it in the comments, because any suggestions can be good as a way of figuring out how I can get it to work for it. So that's all of the Christmas finishes that I have. Now, the rest are miscellaneous kind of finishes that I've done throughout the year. Now, this first one, random thread, is I Run These Towns. This was stitched on, I believe, 25 count linen. This particular fabric was an absolute pain to work on. It had been a pre-cut fabric that I'd bought from somewhere. I think it might have been like Lincraft or Spotlight, somewhere like that, because I wanted to start challenging myself in terms of some of the fabrics that I was stitching on. This was me starting to move away from the 14 count Adas and figuring out what I liked. So this particular piece was a Variegated thread. These were using threads from my stash that I've received through stitching boxes and such. It was cool. I remember when I finished this that I was contemplating what kind of border to put around it and a few other thoughts that went with it. The next piece is a very recent finish that I know I've shared with you in some recent floss tubes. So this is, oh gosh, I don't even remember what it was called. Anyway, the point is I haven't ironed it, so it's making my life just a little bit difficult. Uh, this one was cool. I enjoyed using the variegated thread for the border and personalizing it because I can't count and look at charts very well sometimes. I stitched this on 28 count linen, I believe. Yes, linen, because of what I'm seeing on the fabric. This one was fun though because I had the intention of using a variety of threads from my stash to make it interesting because this had originally been charted to be stitched all in DMC 310 or something very similar to that, where maybe with the exception of perhaps the ghosts being stitched in white or the skeletons at the bottom. Either way, I had fun using some of the threads out of my stash. The next piece I have as a recent finish is the Black Cat sampler. This I remember telling you all about in terms of having fun stitching my first Quaker. I now understand the appeal that many people have with these types of charts. It was a lot of fun. Again, this is another recent finish out of the Just Cross Stitch 2024 Halloween special, which was also where this one that I was just talking about, that's what it was out of. And this is the very cute bat. Okay, so that's it for finishes. Now let's have a little bit of an interlude and get into other stuff. One of the things that I love with my brain still trying to think of where I have stashed away the dimensions kit for barnyard kittens, I came across a couple of other WIPs that I partly forgot about to include in my pile, let alone some lists that I've made that I'll get to very soon of all the WIPs that I have, and then also a list that I have for a lot of charts, patterns, and such that I want to eventually start. With all of that in mind, let's get into the actual WIPs. The first one that I have to share with you is called Midnight Owls, and it is from the magazine called The World of Cross Stitching, and it is issue 274. And you can actually just see here the what it'll eventually look like. However, I'll find a bigger picture just to make life a little bit easier. Okay, so this is designed by Jenny Barton, and this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And this is where I'm up to so far. I'm stitching this on 14 count navy blue Aida. I'm using all of the called for threads. This is turning out super cute. I'm looking forward to putting some more work into this one. Now, staying with the Christmas theme. Actually, while I'm thinking of it, because I've got the piece here, 64. So with the Let It Snow piece that I've done as a small, this was the initial inspiration for what it could have looked like as a larger finish. So it had been designed by Jenny Vanderweil or Weil. I'm not quite sure the exact pronunciation of her surname, so I apologize if I've completely mispronounced it. But yeah, that was something that I thought was pretty cool. One, actually, this kind of fits in the category of something that I've abandoned, and this is partly what I've abandoned because I've actually run out of the thread that I'm using for this, and it's a variegated thread, and most likely has gone out of production. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm at least abandoning it. I could frog a part of it and not have some of the border that's coming up here. What's meant to come up here is half a Christmas tree. That's the start of it there. So I am disappointed. I had mentioned, I think in many episodes ago when I was talking about the stitching in July and me abandoning this, is I think I talked a little bit about using another thread that was a very similar color to this and trying to blend it in and not have it as an obvious, okay, this is where one type of thread finished and this is where the other one starts. Again, we'll wait and see for that. The next one that I have to share with you is one that I actually partly restarted because I couldn't find the fabric that I had initially started this one on. I then found it and fell back in love with the original fabric and such that I started stitching this on, and I've continued to go with it. So I know that this one is a Merry Christmas or a Colourful Christmas or something very similar to that. And it is a digital chart that I have by, I want to say Tilton Crafts, but I'm not 100% certain on it. It is awesome, cool. I got it right. Memory has served me well. So this particular piece is called Merry Colourful, and it is a Tilton Crafts piece. This is roughly what it will look like. And what I love about this particular piece is that from the get-go, you've got color, you've got engagement. It's lovely, awesome, exciting, wonderful to work on. And this is where I'm up to so far. I'm stitching this 2/2 on 25, if not 28 count linen. And it's actually a big piece of linen, partly because I wasn't too sure how big this was going to be or anything like that. So I thought, why not? I've given myself a huge border as well of fabric, probably a bit more than what I should have allowed, but hey, it is what it is. It's all good. It'll be okay. Now, the next piece that I have to share with you is a one that I started last year by memory, and it's called Meowie Christmas by Custom Crafts, designed by Diana Lair, based on artwork by Jenny Newland slash Applejack Art Partners from 2000. And, pardon me, sorry about that. 2008. And I'm stitching this on 14 count Ada that I've had in my stash, and this is where I'm at so far. And yeah, 2/1. This is just a lot of fun to stitch on, partly because it's 14 count and it's a really easy chart to follow. And this is the first full coverage piece that actually has a little bit of backstitch in it to highlight the whiskers in the kittens. And I think there's even a little bit of backstitch for, yeah, it's for the words for Santa. It's going to be a cool, fun piece. The next one that I have to share with you is, I think it's called Scotty Dog Sampler or something very similar to that. This is where I'm at. Actually, I lie. This is where I'm at so far. And it is out of the Ultimate Cross Stitch Christmas, Volume 19 from 2018. This one has featured heavily in a lot of my Christmas themed stitching, and in this particular piece, or magazine rather, it has, what has it done? It has called it Festive Dogs? Yeah, Festive Scotties. And this book is starting to fall apart because I've loved it so much. I've stitched out of it a lot. For example, there we go. For example, these might look familiar for you. And then I also stitched the 12 Days of Christmas out of this magazine book as well. And where are we? Here we are. So this is roughly what it'll look like when it's done. There is the option to be able to finish these dogs as individual cards, as suggested here. It is designed by Lucy Heaton, and this has just been a lot of fun to stitch. It'll take me maybe a few hours to finish each dog completely. I'm stitching this on 28 count even weave, and this fabric is just beautiful. I am going to be gushing over this fabric every time I work on it because as much as I use a hoop for everything to keep the tension, this piece, it just feels so nice and soft in my hands. I love it, love it, love it, absolutely love it. And it is thankfully a fairly large piece of fabric, which means that, yes, these dogs will take up maybe a half, if not three quarters of this. But it's the fact I'm still going to have some fabric left over, and I'm happy about that because, for starters, this is the bottom of where the Scotty dogs are, and it means that I'll have, yeah, it'll be a narrow piece of fabric left over at least from the bottom of where the dogs are. But I'm still going to have some fabric left over. I don't quite remember where I got this fabric from. It'll be okay. It will be okay. It's all good. Okay, so the next piece that I have to share with you is one of my own designs. It is based on words that I've probably heard over the years from a variety of sources. And this is a model stitch that I'm doing whilst trying to find the mock-up for it. Here we are. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I'm stitching this on 29 count even weave, linen, something, fabric. This is where I'm at so far. I've not stitched on this kind of fabric before in the sense of it being 29 count. I know I've potentially talked about this before where I've been so accustomed to hearing about 14, 16, 18, 20, 24, 26, 28, and all the numbers that follow after it. That type of count of fabric, that's all cool. Yet to have it as like 29 count, it's just like one smidgen before 30. It's like, couldn't just smidge just a little bit further to get the 30, or just drop one to get to the 28. To me, it was just like, yeah, I'm just curious. I just wanted to try it out. So that's just a very simple start there. Now I actually finally found the piece that I thought I'd lost, which I'm happy that I haven't lost it or anything to that effect. And this is the Dimensions kit called Barnyard Kittens. And this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And last year I'd completely forgotten about this piece when I was drafting up my list of what projects I wanted to work on for the AFL stitching challenge that I did earlier this year. So I ended up doing a completely different piece, but it was one that is justified because I very much needed to get some work done on it. With all of that in mind, this is where I'm at so far. I'm using all of the called for colours, all of the called for fabric and everything. So this is 14 count Black Ada and it is a dimensions kit. So if anyone watching has or is currently working on a dimensions chart kit, you'll know what I'm talking about in terms of some of the wonderful challenges that come with working on anything that is from dimensions. We know that it is worth it, that there is a reason for why we chose these particular pieces. And there is a reason why I close it to no end. It is going to be worth it in the end, I swear. That is what I keep telling myself. Also based on some of the writings and scribbles that I have for here. Hopefully it's not too glary. Now you may see that, oh, I'm trying to cover up the chart a bit. The scribbles and such that we see there, I started this back in 2020 when I made my first attempt and potentially last attempt for either WIP. Yeah, I think it was WIP Go. I think I've only done WIP Go once. And it was a good challenge. Might do it again. I really should be mindful of my future self when I'm making plans when I'm on holidays because my holiday brain very much thinks that I can achieve everything and anything when when I'm on holidays because I forget what work can be like and I forget how much spare time I may not have when work is work. Anyway, moving on. The next piece that I have to share with you again is my own piece for hot cross stitching. It is a model stitch that you've recently seen in my last catch up with you all. Not much more has changed. So this is I can and I will. This is being stitched on 25 or 28 count linen. Again, as much as I have the measuring tools to be able to say exactly which fabric is what, I haven't pulled it out yet. I'll get there. I am using DMC threads for this, stitching 2/2, and this is going to be cool. I'm looking forward to this one being done. The next piece that I have to share with you also featured in the last time we caught up. It is, again, one of my own designs for hot cross stitching. It is called the Blue Mountains Walking Trail, and this is, oh, if I can get the picture right, this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. It is based on a photo that I took up in the Blue Mountains and converted it to a chart. And we still have threads hanging down and all that jazz. I think I'm getting it around the right way. So this is roughly what it looks like at the moment. Again, super chuffed with how it's all working out. This is 25 count easy grid fabric. Next piece that I have to share with you is again one of my own designs, but it's a personal pattern in the sense that it will never be available, at least in the foreseeable future. It won't be available as a free child purchase or anything to that effect. And that's a lot to do with me being honest and wanting to acknowledge people where I can in terms of who I got the quote from, who I got the design from, or anything along those lines. And this is roughly what it'll look like when it's done. I just fell in love with the colours of the fish and the Pisces symbol, and the quote is from somewhere else that I then superimposed or something onto it, and it says, Pisces, not everyone gets the same version of me. One will tell you I'm a beautiful soul, another will tell you I'm a cold-hearted asshole. Believe both. I act accordingly. And I'm stitching this on 28 count even weave. This is where I'm at. And I have actually done some recent work on this where we see the blue down towards the bottom of this piece. And I have done a little bit more work up near the top right here as well. This again, I am very much looking forward to seeing the fish coming alive. Stitching the Pisces symbol is going to be good for when I don't want to concentrate on individual stitches, because it is such a solid block of colour that needs to be done. It's going to be well worth it though. It's going to be well worth it. The next piece that I have to share with you again is a Tilton Crafts chart, and I can't remember the name of it just yet. It is called Halloween Treats 1, and this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. I'm stitching this on 25 or 28 count even weave. This is roughly where I'm up to, and I initially started in the top corner and then realized that it was going to be boring and take forever to actually get to where the fun stuff is. So I've come and started this in the center, which means that when I do eventually get up to where this corner is where you see the stitching, I'm going to figure out what I'll do then. That is a future me problem that I will need to figure out. I appreciate that this may seem like a bit of an abrupt pause, because it seemed like I was very much mid-flow with this particular WIP parade, but this is me now at the editing stage and reflecting on how much has gone into the WIP parade so far, and that there's still a lot more content to go. So this is where I'm going to say that this is the end of part one for the WIPs and Finishes Parade, and I will then be releasing the part two of the WIP Parade in a couple of weeks' time. So I look forward to being able to catch up with all of you then and share with you the next stages of my progress of WIPs and such. And until next time, I hope you have enjoyed my stitching so far and sharing with you the WIPs and finishes that I have done for the majority of 2024. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time. So happy stitching, everyone. See you.